Hi everybody. Today I want to really spend a couple of minutes on the typical challenges when planning corporate immigration in Africa. I will focus really typically on questions and challenges corporates face. And the advice I give, or the pointers I want to give, are really based on now more than probably 10 years of extensive experience on the African continent. So I think the first challenge we always faced with is that immigration seems to be one of the very last points corporates think about when they want to either enter a market or send talent to African markets. There's lots of other things which seem to be more important and be considered first. But the rushed decision-making causes a lot of problems. Firstly, we're not going to check, does the candidate actually meet all the requirements? Is there a local understudy? Also, there are, in some countries, really, really long lead times. And then the business kind of says, yeah, but we need the person in 3 months there, which often can be solved with a short-term work permit, because luckily in most African countries you can change actually from a short-term work permit to a long-term in-country. But nevertheless, it obviously opens the door to all kinds of requests to quickly solve it and get a result quickly, and that's not always ethical compliant. So ideally, HR managers, my wish would be to really think 6 months in advance and even identify candidates within the organization already who can be on a list of potential transferees, and really check with the immigration provider if they meet the requirements. So that's, I think, the main challenge I see is just that immigration is not thought of as the first priority about international assignments. It's often actually comes too late in the process, okay? Then I think the second one is that the vast majority of African countries, when we talk about immigration, require local employment, okay? So South Africa has an intercompany transfer, and there's 1 or 2 other countries also having that. But in general, most countries, the vast majority requires local employment. So if you obviously have a daughter company where you have local employment, that's fine. But as you know, a lot of corporates or international transferees don't want to actually be locally employed because of local payroll requirements, etc., because their overseas packages are more, are better for them, are more lucrative. So that causes a lot of problems. And then obviously for the companies who don't have branches or offices in Africa, and there's obviously a lot of African markets where they're not yet established, that's a problem, a fundamental problem, because your client will not employ them. So the only solution often are employer of record companies. But they face other challenges, right? You might have tax issues, you might have compliance issues. And the immigration also doesn't always work for all the employer of record companies, because if it's in a specific sector, for instance, a journalist or, I don't know, a financial advisor, then the employer of record company usually requires the licenses and they don't have that. So that's a real challenge. So please look out for that. That local employment is a massive requirement in Africa, okay? Then maybe moving over we get often asked, so where do we find information about African immigration? And yes, it's very inaccessible. It's not really available on the web. Obviously, there are countries which are much more advanced, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, Mauritius, even South Africa. You find a lot online. But it's not always right? Apparently on the internet, not everything is right you find. So you need to be very wary. And then in countries like in Namibia, Botswana, and other countries, stuff is completely outdated. Most of the directives are not even to be found anywhere. So in short, the access to reliable information is extremely challenging. And that's why I think it's really important to have a reliable provider who has this information and can provide this information. But you also need to keep in mind that obviously just having reliable legal information doesn't mean practically this is how it's going to work and how it's processed. Because unfortunately in Africa there's a massive difference between the practical implementation and the law. And that's just a fact. And that's another challenge. Because you might read it up, you might get advice, and then in practice something completely different happens. Now that's the challenge we as immigration providers face, but the companies, you must really calculate that in. And I think the core solution to this is open communication, and also probably managing the assumptions and expectations internally, so within the company correctly. So we usually really do well with HR partners who understand our challenges and fully understand the challenges in Africa, but then prepare the internal team for that, and not just kind of follow what the internal team wants and HR just conveys message to us and blames us. That doesn't work really well in a long-term relationship. So access to reliable information is the next challenge. The fourth challenge I see in practice is a lot when it comes to providers, your partners in Africa, is fast and comprehensive communication. So even we, although we have spent years in establishing a reliable vendor network, supply chain, partner network, whatever you want to call it, even we are really amazed still that most of the communication goes through WhatsApp. Forget email. Email is, I don't know, seems to be for old people like me. So WhatsApp, but with WhatsApp often comes 1 million problems, right? It's not reliable, it's piecemeal, it's never comprehensive. I mean, you ask 3 questions, 2 get answers, and then the other one gets forgotten and the other one is half answered. There's no proactivity, pre-assuming other follow-up questions. It's a ping-pong game back and forth, and then, as I said, and that ping-pong game is even bad because the information is not read, it's rushed, and then they have power cuts. So it's really difficult to find somebody who would maybe communicate in standards your international assignees are really expecting, because that's your challenge as a corporate, right? I mean, you're looking for international super experienced talent. They're expensive, and you want to give them a good service. And the immigration providers are really struggling with that. So again, I think it's really important to team up with an experienced team which is really used to the habits of international communication, really adheres to that. But I think you need to be prepared that the usual responsiveness is definitely not according to US or European standards or even Asian standards. Okay. I have another 2 or 3 small challenges, so bear with me. It's another maybe minute or so. I think another challenge, but quite frankly, any immigration company will probably say that long lead times is a challenge in Africa. However, I have to say that after COVID, when I see how long the US Embassy in Johannesburg takes to give an appointment, which is 6 months, actually most African countries are not too bad. However, half jokingly, obviously, there are some countries now after COVID which have tremendously long processing times, and the country I'm sitting in, South Africa, is probably the worst of all of them. So our immigration system at the moment is just disastrous with processing times to up to a year. But I don't want to talk much about South Africa, but even Kenya we see massive delays. I mean, Kenya was reliable, right? Reliable means 3, 4, maybe 6 weeks for Class D. Now easily 3 to 4 months. Namibia is a little bit the opposite. There used to be 6 months for a long-term permit. Now they come out a bit faster. So, but bottom line is that the long lead times, and especially also that foreign qualifications normally need to be transferred into the local equivalent, the lead times you need for corporate immigration in Africa are at least 6 months. As a matter of fact, probably 8 to 9 months. That's the lead time. So you kind of have to identify people who want to go in 8 or 9 months, then approach an immigration provider like us, and then we can probably make it happen in most countries. There are some countries which are much faster and reliable, but long lead times, I think, is something to watch out for. Then maybe another one, unmarried couples, life partners, doesn't exist. Okay, vast majority of African countries do not accept unmarried couples. And not to mention homosexual couples, that's in most African countries not possible. There are some exceptions, Mauritius, Mozambique, South Africa. But that is a challenge. And looking at the international norm of transferees, obviously that is a challenge you need to cater for and maybe think of it in advance. Anyway, I hope you found these 5 or 6 challenges informative. If you have any questions, please reach out to us, and I can assure you we can at least try to solve most of your corporate immigration needs in Africa. Please contact me over the usual social media channels, and you will see all the links there in that thing there under YouTube. So contact us. Cheers. Bye.